Yo, better than like it's the Krewe NFC, the roundtable where the real heads be. Talking NFL, the game we adore, but from the touchdowns to the legends and so much more. That fucking guy, he's got the stats on lock, dropping knowledge on the field, watching every block. Back and bleeding green, cheering loud and proud. In the sea of cheese, as he's standing out the crowd. I can't hear with the looks and the smarts, breaking down the plays, and he does it with heart. Then the stout, solid like the line. His takes are heavy, his vision's divine. Week by week, we break the game down. From every big play to every new crown. Offense, defense, we cover it all. From the springtime drafts to the winner's last call. Not just a podcast, it's a fan's lifeline. Connecting every moment from the vines to the shrine.
Good morning and welcome to the Krewe NFC Roundtable. I'm Mike Sidorus. With me is Candy Andy and Mike Stout. Gentlemen, how are we doing this afternoon, this morning, this evening, today? How are we doing?
Okay. I got on here on time, so we're doing good.
Well, you also had help from your 4-year-old, so.
You actually made it on time, and we're the first one in today except for me. So, Stout, I'm actually kind of proud of you. It's not very often that we get to actually be proud of you. So, good job.
I'm excited.
Yeah, what's next? You can put your pants on all by yourself, too?
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
So, last week we had started a topic, all NFC, all NFC Division all-time teams. We started off with the NFC North, got a little bit into it. Unfortunately, it kind of got cut by, well, unfortunately, I should say. Not really unfortunately. We had a great guest on last week when Jared Tomich, when he gave us his story as to his progression into the NFL and how things went for him and whatnot, whatever. So today we can actually get back into our all-division teams. NFC North, Andy, you had some, I don't know, I'm not saying they were bad takes, but not takes that everybody would agree with. Let's get your team going again, and we'll make fun of you.
So, 2 things with that. So, what? Because obviously, with the Bears having the most amount of Hall of Famers in the history of naturally it's going to be Bear heavy, just simply because, they have over 1,000 players in the NFL Hall of Fame. This is what it seems like. Well, we'll go ahead and start off again. Just to recap from the last week, of course. With the quarterback, I actually chose Sid Luckman, 4-time NFL champion, 137 touchdowns, over 14,000 total yards, and he revolutionized the T formation. Hence the song. Chicago. We should have seen that, actually.
The T formation. Let's think about how many teams are still using that.
I think 34 out of the 32.
So I get you. Sid Luckman's not a bad choice, and he was ahead of his time being a Bears quarterback that actually could throw a ball. And still, we have yet to see that in how many decades. But how can you pass up the chance to put Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers on your roster?
I think I mentioned this before. I said, I'm sorry, but I'd never heard of her.
In all seriousness, though.
So, if you're looking at – so one of the things, of course, and the way that I was actually able to choose these was actually, we'll talk about that offline, but I was kind of looking a little bit more of who revolutionized that particular thing. Brett Favre, Aaron, of course, they actually didn't necessarily revolutionize anything. They actually kind of sort of improved on – on the status quo. They were able to, of course, be a little bit more mobile, so they were able to move the pocket. They were able to find the open guy. Brett Favre, for example, has a real high interception rate because of the fact he's the old, gunslinger type of mentality. And it's just one of those things. So if you're looking at, in my opinion, a little bit more revolutionary, not necessarily throughout the entirety of the list, but it just seemed a little bit better for me. You could have actually, Paul Hornick, for example. He actually did quite a few things as well. You can actually go with several of the, Lions didn't have a whole lot of fantastic quarterbacks. Same thing with the Vikings, but if you're looking at something that actually revolutionized, so for example, like the running back, Again to recap, we had a bit of a thing, and I got like a tie kind of halfback, fullback, that kind of thing with Walter Payton as my number one with over 16,700 rushing yards, 110 touchdowns, 9-time Pro Bowl, and Barry Sanders with over 15,200 rushing yards, 99 touchdowns. So literally, you had Walter Payton as 1977 MVP, Barry Sanders the 1997 MVP. And that was one of the debates that we of course had. Also, where does Adrian Peterson come in? Where does other running backs like that? But again, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders. When you think NFL, when you think running backs, those are usually the first two names that actually pop up. So, and of course, Walter Payton's he's a Bear. Wide receiver.
Yeah, we're not just going to act like the Barry Sanders. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm just trying to figure out who he has first. I already know the answer, but who do you?
I told you, Walter.
Number one.
Walter's going to be number one.
That's wrong. That's Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
We had a guest on. We had a guest on that even said how great he was. That actually played again. So
right.
He's number one, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I could go down the list, but Sanders is number one. He would have broke the record if he would have stayed.
Go down the list.
Emmitt Smith wouldn't even come close to it if he would have stayed.
Yeah. Okay. Walter Payton, 16,726 rushing yards, 110 touchdowns. Barry Sanders, 15,269 rushing yards, 99 touchdowns. How many touchdowns did Walter Payton throw for?
3.
So you have running, you have catching, you've got everything.
Okay. But here's the other thing too. Barry Sanders Barry Sanders has as many Super Bowl touchdowns as Walter Payton as well. So
I love when people bring that up and it's not me.
Well, you see, it was also one of those things where once Walter Payton got the ball, all 4,000 players on the opposing team immediately gravitated towards him, which allowed for the opening of everything from Willie Gault to Matt Suey to, you name it. Even Walter Bridge.
I don't think you can go wrong with either at the starting helm for the NFC North team. But you're good. You got Payton. Oh, let's go to the wide receiver room.
So this is where things get a little bit interesting because, again, you had several wide receivers that were of note for the Bears and, for other teams and things like that. But I did, in fact, have to go with Calvin Johnson. So a little over 11,600 total yards, 83 touchdowns, single season reception yards record of almost 2,000 yards. 6-time Pro Bowler, of course, Hall of Famer. He fought for the ball. He first off, size-wise, was he 6'5", 6'6", probably about 230, 240. That could run, that could jump. And, like I said, he definitely was able to get the ball and actually gain yards after the fact. So that's actually what made him, kind of a special player, even though he was a Detroit Lion, unfortunately. But also a wide receiver I got, Johnny Morris. 5,059 yards, 31 touchdowns. Of course, Bears leading receiver until 1999, unfortunately. 1963 NFL champion.
Dude.
Okay, dude. Randy Moss. Come on, dude.
Who?
Oh, God.
Chris Carter, Randy Moss. Who? Come on, bro. You can't be serious with this one.
You also have to look at the teams. They were under I guess brief consideration, I suppose. If anything, I'm kind of more of a Chris Carter fan than a Randy Moss fan. I think it just might be because Chris Carter kind of sort of did his thing quietly. He'd catch the ball and he might have like a little reaction after the fact, but then he basically just got up, walked back to the huddle and just like play. Randy Moss was a little bit more of a showboat. So, maybe that's probably what it was. But, if you actually see some of the old films of Johnny Morris, for example, he was like the Randy Moss of the 60s.
I tried to look up old film of him, but there was no film then.
Just like your hair. Yeah, gotcha. Let's actually move on to tight end because I think this might be a bit of a contention as well.
Wait. You can have him on your team, but you're wrong. That's That's it. It's okay. You can have them, but you're wrong.
That's your opinion. That's perfectly fine.
That's
Your
everybody's
opinion is
opinion
wrong.
but yours.
Your opinion is absolutely wrong. Look, I could have even had. You could have had several different Bears that were on there. Kevin Hester,
Gentry in there.
Johnny Knox. Johnny Knox, unfortunately, was a player who was injured, and but he could have actually done something special. He was actually starting to kind of come into his own, but then unfortunately, you had several different Bears, several different, even Lions had several different, oh my goodness. But I went with Johnny Morris just because.
Let's go tight end. You have potential for 2 Bears here. Let's see who you go with.
I actually went with Mike Ditka. Mike Ditka, 5-time Pro Bowler, over 5,800 yards, 43 touchdowns, first time to eclipse 1,000 yards in the season. In 1961, Rookie of the Year. He did play for a different team, but that team, I think, was like Division III type of NFL. So, they didn't have a whole lot of people going on, team-wise. Roger something or another. I never really heard of him. But
Rookie of the Year, huh? Rookie of the Year. Where was that at?
1961.
I don't think anyone's going to argue the fact that Ditka shouldn't be on the NFC North team because he was a tight end for the Bears, blah, blah, blah. But what about Greg Olsen? Did he even get consideration for that?
No. You have several players that were actually, potentially. And yes, you have names that are outside the division, Tony Gonzalez, Gates, you had several different ones that were actually, if not or in the are on the Hall of Fame, should be in the Hall of Fame. But the reason why I went with Ditka, of course, obvious reasons. But then, of course, he became, of course, the Bears coach after he stinted the Division III NFL team there in Texas. And so, it's just one of those things where even though there were several different players that could have actually made the list, I had to pick Mike Ditka. Had to.
All right. And I'm assuming you're going all 85 Bears offensive line here for your offensive lineman.
A good portion of left tackle, Jimbo Covert, 2-time All-Pro, 1985, of course, champion, Hall of Fame class of 2020. So if you don't think that Jimbo Covert should be on there.
I agree.
I agree with that one.
Yep. So this one I know is going to probably be a little bit controversial because, who cares? Mark Bortz, left guard. Now, I remember back in the day, friends of mine and myself, we actually went up to Platteville to watch the Bears actually practice and stuff like that. And he was actually one of the guys that was actually, and this was before, like early on in the training camp, before they put any fences and stuff up. So the players were actually circulating through the crowd trying to get to the practice field. And Mark Bortz actually bumped into, my buddy. He was actually moving around. He actually bumped into Mark Bortz. Like, oh, excuse me. And he just kept walking. So, because of the fact we were just kind of sort of within that general, that's why we ended up having to pick him.
Can we just move on from the NFC North because this my head can't take it anymore.
To get to the
NFC, who are you thinking is left guard, Mike?
I got Randall McDaniel from the Vikings.
Yeah.
Randall
McDaniel. All right,
exactly.
Ronald McDonald. So
Ronald McDonald.
I'm assuming you got Hilgenberg at center.
No.
Oddly enough, I do. 7-time Pro Bowl, 2-time All. He was the anchor of the offensive line. So the funny thing is, Hilgenberg, he actually was one who basically kind of sort of taught several of the other Bears centers to be able to center. He was the one, of course, in charge of all the calls. He was an excellent center. He really was.
Yeah, I have Hilgenberg there. There were other choices, but I had Hilgenberg there. I'm sure Stout had someone from Green Bay there.
No. See, this is where, unfortunately,
no, I didn't.
The Steelers aren't necessarily within, division or anything like that, because I actually would have liked to have picked Dermontti Dawson. I've always been a huge Dermontti Dawson fan. Absolute all-world center also, but just a different division.
Not to go into the Steelers, but the transition from Mike Webster to Dermontti Dawson is probably the best transition of any lineman in the league. But anyway, let's go further. I know Green Bay Packer at your left guard or right guard.
I do. So if you actually have the same list on what, but that would actually be Jerry Kramer. So I did in fact look at several of the Packers that are actually on here, and he actually did pretty well. He was a little bit bigger, a little bit faster than the other players of that time. So that's actually what made him a little bit more of a dominant type player. And so, that's one of the reasons why I actually chose him. And then right tackle, we'll go with Forrest Gregg with the Packers, 9-time Pro Bowl, 7-time All-Pro. Vince Lombardi called him the best player he ever coached, which, of course, isn't really saying much because I never really heard of this Vince guy.
I mean, it's a solid list for your offense. Like I said, the main positions of change for me would be quarterback, running back, wide receiver. But I'm pretty much in step with you for your offensive line. I don't have anything really to argue with there. Mike, you got anything for him on the offensive side of the ball?
You don't think I should have picked Calvin Johnson as a wide receiver?
I love Calvin Johnson. I definitely don't love Johnny Morrison.
Yeah.
I would probably – they're like 1 and 2. It's like looking in the mirror.
No.
Anyway, what do you got, Mike? You got anything for him before he goes into his defensive debacle?
No, he could move along.
All right. On the defensive side of the ball, what do you got, Andy?
So, of course, defensive end, Richard Dent. Come on. 137.5 sacks, Super Bowl 20 MVP, of course, Hall of Fame class of 2011. Richard Dent, of course, was a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger than everybody else, and just what they showed. Just like Reggie White, for example. And Reggie White actually was like one of those things, because I've always been a big fan of Reggie White as well. That whole club move that he would actually do on 2 offensive tackles when he gets a move one way, and it would just help him along. Next thing you know, he's got a free path to create havoc. But I had to go with Richard Dent just because.
Well, you got 2 of them, so you can go Richard Dent, Reggie White. But what do you got, Mike?
Yeah, that's what. No, that's what I wanted to see who his other defensive end was, because I was waiting to see if it was Reggie White at all. But it's probably not.
It is. Okay. So defensive tackle. What?
Go ahead, Andy.
Defensive tackle, I got Alan Page with the Vikings. So if you actually look at the old Purple People Eaters, you have several different players you could have actually chosen right there, and Alan Page is actually definitely one of the top ones. 148.5 sacks, unofficial, of course. 1971 NFL MVP, only defensive tackle to win it. Hall of Famer. And apparently he was later a Minnesota Supreme Court justice, which is also a plus. But it's just the fact that, he, again, for his time, a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger. You actually had a little bit of technique. Next thing you know, you're in the Hall of Fame. It's just it was certainly one of those things. Other defensive tackle, you got to go with Dan Hampton. Could have had Steve McMichael, who's also a Hall of Famer. 4-time Pro Bowl, 57 career sacks, Super Bowl 20 champion. Dan Hampton was one of those guys who actually had the high motor. So even if he wasn't necessarily in on the play to kind of sort of break things up, he was able to actually run down the field and still be able to be in on that tackle. So that high motor is actually probably what differentiated him from some of the other defensive tackles within the league at that time, really. And yes, you have Randall. You've got several different players from Minnesota and Detroit that were defensive tackles that actually made names for themselves, but personal preference. John Randall, John Randall, in fact, was, I would say, probably a close. So if you were actually doing like a third down switch, I would definitely put John Randall in there. He might have been a little shorter than everybody else, but hey, you want to talk about a high motor. So he was definitely.
You want to.
Yeah, he was definitely up there. Outside linebacker. Now that's just one of those things where it's absolutely wide open. Everything from one of them, my picks, of course, was Lance Briggs.
Ooh,
so 7-time Pro Bowler. 7-time Pro Bowler, 1,173 career tackles, 16 interceptions. He was actually the player that would actually pick up the slack for Urlacher. So, of course, with the Bears defense and in that particular time period, early 2000s and things, you actually had you actually had several different players that could have actually taken that spot as well. But if you have a strong defensive line, you have your linebackers that can roam sideline to sideline and actually make your tackles for you. And that's actually one of the better things that Lance Briggs was able to do. Create turnovers, and like the old Peanut Tillman, peanut punch kind of deal.
Yeah.
Outside linebacker
was Briggs.
Briggs.
Okay.
And Dave Robinson for the Packers. So 3-time Pro Bowl, part of 3 NFL championships, Hall of Fame class for 2013. There's definitely enough, film on him and stuff like that. Very, very similar. He did have a bit of a mean streak, to where he would get to make that tackle. He would make that tackle hard. And he was able to actually do a few things sideline to sideline, but he's a Packer.
Middle linebacker.
Middle linebacker. I'm having to go with Dick Butkus. 8-time Pro Bowl, 2020 total tackles, Hall of Fame, 1979. It's Dick Butkus. Again, he's like one of those iconic names throughout the NFL that when you say, you immediately think of that particular person, that particular player. And there were countless linebackers that could have been chosen, literally from any team. You could have even said Urlacher, another Hall of Famer. But you also have the Packers teams, the Detroit Lions teams, the Vikings teams that always had some sort of a strong middle linebacker that was able to make the calls and make the plays, really.
Yes, that NFC North mentality, really.
Right. Outside, who was your other outside linebacker, Andy? I don't know. I missed it.
Dave Robinson with the Packers.
You didn't go with Ray Nitschke at all?
Yeah, but he also played in the same era, basically same position as Dick Butkus, so that's one of the reasons why, they were basically like neck to neck kind of thing. But of course, Butkus was leaps and bounds much better than another guy.
You can put him at an outside linebacker, though. I mean, he did play there, so I mean, it wasn't like it'd be a hard switch for him. Another outside linebacker. I mean, I know you put Lance Brigg, and that's good, but I went with somebody else. So, but Chris Spielman.
Oh yeah, Chris Spielman. Cerebral, very cerebral player, as a matter of fact. He was a little bit. I mean, I'm not. I was saying he was a little bit smaller, but he was always in the right position where they needed him to be. So, that's one of the reasons why he was so disruptive.
Spielman was more cerebral.
I just said that.
Yeah, he's.
I think the NFC North picking the linebackers, you could probably shuffle so many players in and out that you can't choose like really a wrong answer for those 3 positions. So
are you guys even paying attention? I already said all this.
So the defensive secondary is where I think the NFC North falls off. This is really tough pickings as you go from corner to safety. Who you got? I mean, nothing really was exceptional to me except for maybe one player.
Peanut, Charles Tillman.
Oof. Mm.
He had to be. Simply because he had 38 interceptions, 44 forced fumbles. You have an entire thing built around what he created, the Peanut Punch. So there would be no cornerbacks if it wasn't for Charles Peanut Tillman.
There'd be no cornerbacks?
Ever.
All right. So who you got?
I think there's a guy on the Lions that started it a long time ago.
Who? Would that be Len Barney? Because he's my other cornerback. 56 interceptions, 7 touchdowns, 7-time Pro Bowler, Hall of Fame class of 19 and 92. He was just one of those guys, kind of like our generation, like an Atwater, places, people like that would literally come in, hit you about as hard as you can be hit, to where literally, your soul would be like boing, right back into your body. And that's how hard he would hit. Also pretty cerebral. The 2 or 3 little clips that I had seen of him, pretty cerebral. Again, one of those players that always seem to be in the right place at the right time to be disruptive on all accounts.
What about former Michigan great here? I know Stout's like fuming right now. You just pass over Charles.
There are no former Michigan greats.
Charles Woodson is arguably one of the best corners of all time.
Never heard of him.
But all right, safety.
Yeah,
this is where it gets tough.
Only because he was again he actually took what was there and kind of improved on it just to a point. And again, speed. He always seemed to be in the right place. Like that Tyrann Mathieu guy, however you want to pronounce his name. For some reason, he had a fairly long NFL career. He always seemed to be in the right place at the right time to be able to get an interception, to be able to break up a play. Charles Woodson was often like that as well. And one of the reasons why I didn't pick him, because he went to Michigan. That's a terrible school.
So,
I don't even know they even have a football team anymore. But my safety.
Safeties. Who do you got?
Gary Fensick. 38 interceptions, 10 fumble recoveries, Super Bowl 20 champ, of course. Fast, mean. And he's the only, he's like Peanut Tillman, he's the only safety in the history of the NFL.
I would
John Taylor, maybe.
I put Plank in over Fensick.
Who? Come on.
Really?
Come on. I'm talking about football players.
I'm talking about a Bear here.
I'm talking about guys who were 85 Bears. Anyway, they just happen to kind of sort of, again, revolutionize their position. Gary Fensick.
It's called the 46 zone.
He revolutionized the safety position.
No,
All
right.
All right. Anyway,
oh my God.
So,
well, who do you have? Who do you have? Who do you have? No, who do you have?
Well, I would say Plank over Fensick, but I have Paul Krause from Minnesota.
Yeah.
His name came up a couple of times. I'm like, okay. So when I popped over and seen some of his videos, yeah, I can totally see that. So we'll say Gary Fensick. Secondary would be that other guy. So if Gary Fensick ever needed like a break or something like that, maybe we'll bring him in for like a play or two throughout the game.
Who's your other safety? Your starting other starting safety.
Oddly enough, it's Paul Krause from the Vikings. 81 interceptions, which is an NFL record. 8-time Pro Bowler, Hall of Fame class 19 and 98. So when
we're just
Andy, you seriously
I just wanted to talk shit.
Dick LeBeau. Yeah, Dick LeBeau.
Yeah, what about him?
Seriously? Oh my God.
Anyway, all right. Who's your kicker? You got a kicker, punter, and special teamer or kick returner. Your choice.
Frazier Johnson. I just thought we were just throwing out random names without any facts.
Who's your kicker?
So we have actually several different kickers.
No, we have one. Give me a kicker.
It's got to be Robbie Solid Gold. You did have Kevin Butler, of course. You even had the Detroit guy with oh my goodness, what was his name? With the foot that actually held the NFL longest kick for I don't know how many years and stuff like that. I'm sorry I forget his name, but I had to go with Robbie Gold. 1961 total career points, 86.5 field goal accuracy. The Bears actually all-time leading scorer, who unfortunately had to go to San Francisco for a while. Well, are we going to throw some other names out? That don't mean anything?
No, we're going to get you. We're just keep moving along the list, buddy. Just keep on moving along.
Absolutely not.
Morton Anderson. That's the other kicker I would throw out there.
Mediocre best.
He's one of those. He's like Deion Sanders. He could be on just about every NFC team division-wise because he played so damn long.
Hey, he's no Grammatica, but he ain't bad.
He's not on my team either. Who's your punter?
Chris Kluwe, Vikings, 10-year NFL vet, known for powerful leg and hang time.
There you go. You could have put a Bear here because they get the most punts in the division, but that's good. You went away from it.
Anyway, let's go to the kick return.
Just say it.
Who else but Devin Hester? NFL record 20 return touchdowns, 4-time Pro Bowl. Ran the opening kickback in the Super Bowl. Well, we don't really want to talk about the overall ending of that particular game, but opening kickback for a touchdown.
Well, oddly enough, Peyton scored the same amount of touchdowns in that game as he did in this 85 Super Bowl.
That is true. That is true. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with Devin Hester. Mel Gray deserve some mention here, but pretty solid team, Andy.
What about coach?
Bear heavy from
Who's coach?
What's that?
We can go with the coach.
Come on. We all know who you're going to pick the coach. You're wrong, but pick him anyway.
Vince, what are you kidding? George Halas. 6-time NFL champion. He had a grand total of 318 victories, 148 losses. And he was actually there at the inception of the NFL itself in 1920.
Yeah, you're wrong, but okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure who you think you're going to pick, but believe me when I say you're absolutely wrong.
It's called the Lombardi Trophy.
Trophy.
Well, sometimes they have to give a consolation prize to somebody else. And that just happened to be him.
Stop.
This is one of those shows. I could go, but this is one of those shows I wish I couldn't get the code right and get it in and just miss.
So let's do his division because I know they're all wrong and I'm going to start laughing uncontrollably and pass out. So let's hurry up and get to that point.
NFC East.
Okay. You're wrong. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh boy.
QB, Mike, who you got?
At quarterback, I got Roger Staubach.
Who cares? Who cares? Who cares?
Yes!
Mm-hmm. Nobody cares.
Anyway, okay.
Oh.
Could have went with Aikman. Staubach's a good choice.
Yeah. And then I picked two. I went with two quarterbacks, and I kind of went. I know the long list that we could go with NFC quarterbacks, but I went with Randall Cunningham just for what he's done. I can respect that. Yeah. So I got Staubach and Cunningham there at quarterback. Running back wise, I went with Tony Dorsett. I know I'm going to get probably a lot from that one, and then I got John Riggins from the Redskins because that's the team they played on, so I'm allowed to say it now.
Right. So Dorsett over Smith, Riggins over Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then I got Emmett there. As much as I'm a huge fan of Emmitt Smith, I had this argument with people all the time. Bruce Dorsett was a better running back. And look, you get put on. I know the argument with Emmitt Smith is for the naysayers is always, well, he had one of the best offensive lines. Well, that's true. You could have a lot of times you could have plugged people in there, but what my argument is the toughness that he showed, a lot of people forget about. Multiple times playing injured, just so he could beat up, the Giants, the Redskins and stuff. And I get all that. But when I'm looking at somebody that I want to make, Tony Dorsett's it. I had this argument with everybody, and I'm always wrong. But I think Dorsett's a better running back than Emmitt Smith. Yeah, he's got the record and all that stuff, and he was good. And I liked watching him in the 90s. But I always thought Dorsett was just a little bit better than Emmett was. And and with John Riggins, it's John Riggins. Come on.
Where did Tiki Barber actually sit within that area?
No.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for the commentary.
I could see like the argument with him, but no, not
what about Barkley?
The running backs that they've. Yeah, you're talking about now. I don't think he's. I know he's done enough, but he's not done yet. So I'm going off of players that their careers are basically done already. I think the way it's looking, Barkley will probably end up in the top 2, top 3 when his career is done. So
do you think Barkley's like an offensive line kind of a guy, or is he like an actual elusive type of talent kind of a guy? Which one do you think takes more advantage of?
Barkley?
Yeah.
I think he's just a hell of a running back. I think he don't. They could say it's because he's got a good offensive line now, and look what he did with the Giants, and they were horrid. He showed what he could do, but that's why I didn't really go with anybody that's still really playing right now, just because the careers. I want to see how they finish their careers and how it goes from there. So,
Do you have a fullback on your roster?
yes, you know I do. You know I do.
Well,
I do
I
have.
was going to say you could
fullback.
easily slide Riggins the fullback and go.
I could, but I went with Daryl Johnston. I mean,
The
you
Moose.
can't. Mm-hmm.
You're right.
And yeah, Andy, you could be a Fulmer, and I went with the Cowboys, whatever. But
Daryl
career
Johnson would be the guy. That's
between
the thing.
him, I mean, there's really, when you think of the fullback position anymore, that's, I mean, because he played in the 90s. I mean, if you know football, I think that he's one of the top fullbacks ever to play. I mean, and I'm not even counting like Emmett being his running back, just what he did and how unselfish he was of knowing what he had to do and what he wanted to do just to make the running backs better. And it wasn't even when Emmett was in there, it was when other running backs were in there. He would just tell them, like, look, just follow me and you'll be fine.
Yeah, Moose was essentially just a pulling guard in the backfield.
Yeah. But
honestly.
they did give him, yeah, and they did give him his, I call 15 minutes of fame, let him, when they needed, sometimes they needed,
punch it in.
1 yard and, it's going to Emmett. They would have Emmett go one way and him go the other, and he just, get 5 yards. So that's why I went with him. And then
I'm assuming we're going Dallas heavy here at wide receiver.
No, we're not. So,
who you got?
Well, I mean, I got 4. The first one I'm going with is Art Monk from the Redskins. I got him starting. I don't think, I mean, there could be arguments, but if you go back and watch what he did for the Redskins, it was pretty phenomenal what he's done there. So then the other wide receiver I got, Michael Irvin. That would be my Cowboy thrown in. And then, like I said, I went with 4. The other one I went with T.O. when he was with the Eagles, because he barely did anything with the Cowboys. That I think he was a better player when he was on the Eagles. And then Drew Pearson. So, yeah, I went Cowboy heavy a little bit. What? You froze, or are you just trying to figure out who I should have picked there? He froze.
I guess so. So Art Monk, of course, I can totally agree with Art Monk in the fact that he was one of those players that kind of sort of revolutionized actually the position, because you had the quarterback for, of course, the Redskins, and eventually you had Williams, of course, who when they won the Super Bowl. But Art Monk was one of those guys who, again, a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger. He was able to actually get that, but I 100% agree with that one. Michael Irvin, of course, he's a great player, but then again, you had that team that was so situated. That offensive line, we could have actually run through some of those holes.
Yeah, but he's a receiver.
Absolutely. So. But you're missing the whole point there. So you had that offensive line, that quarterback, that team.
Yeah. I apologize, guys. Something happened with my computer. It just blacked out on me. So I don't know what I missed, but
just talking about Art Monk. And then we got into Michael Irvin. So
you got 2 more?
Yeah, I had T.O. with the Eagles. I think that's when he froze, and then I got Drew Pearson. So
no love for Dez?
No, not on this list. So as much as I didn't want to put T.O. on there, what he did with the Eagles, when he was an Eagle, he I wish he would have done what he did with the Eagles with the Cowboys, but
yeah, I think T.O. makes it twice. I think he's going to make it NFC West and now and here in the East as well.
So and then tight end. Moving on to tight end. I changed it. I changed it because of Andy up there. So I put Witten. I started Witten as my tight end. And the only reason I did it, I did have Dick in there for the reasons Andy put. But when he won all those awards, he was the Cowboys. But I went with Jason Witten. And I would always go with Jason Witten now, as much as what Dick did for the tight end position. think people don't give Jason Witten a lot of credit of what he did when he played. I think he gets left out of a lot of conversations just because he doesn't have all the stats, I think. But what he did with blocking, and I think he was one of the, as much as we want to talk about Gonzalez and all them, Jason Witten was a better blocker than most of them guys were, in my opinion. So, and we could argue that point, but I mean, still, one of the major clips they show is when he's running without his helmet. I mean, dude never stopped. He had a high motor.
Witten, I think, was not overshadowed, I would say, but he just played in a different era of tight end. That's when you had, the Tony Gonzalez, you had the Jimmy Graham, you had the people stepping out and actually becoming a receiving tight end, whereas Witten was doing both. He was still blocking a lot. He was still picking up the edge for the Cowboys, but he was there, and he was always that blanket for him. So I'm good with that. I don't know who else you would go with other than Ditka, so I'm good with that one.
Yeah. So, yeah. But, somebody had to take, just because he coached the Bears and played there for a couple seasons.
And just because my picks were actually just much better.
Left tackle, left guard, we're going Dallas, I'm assuming. That would be my selection. Who you got?
Well, hang on for a second. I didn't. Actually, at left tackle, I did not. I wanted to change it, especially after talking to Tomich, when we talked about the Cowboys left tackle. What, Andy?
Yeah, can I suggest one? Chris Samuels, Washington.
No. So
anyway,
so I went with Roosevelt Brown from the Giants at left tackle.
Okay, that went over like a thread.
No,
I don't know if a lot of people leave him off a list. I don't know why. If you go kind of watch what he's done, it's kind of hard not to put him there. As much as I wanted to put people there, my guy from the Cowboys, again, he didn't have a long career, but the overall career of Roosevelt Brown was, it's just fantastic how fast he was for that time and how big he was. He didn't, so. And left guard, Larry Allen. Sorry, Larry Allen. I don't think there's an argument on that one from a lot of people.
Probably the best of all time.
Basically, the only person to ever make him look bad was Reggie White. So, you kind of that. And then at center, this is kind of where I struggled a little bit. I wanted to pull Andy and just go with Stefanowski from the Cowboys.
That's who I thought you were going with.
I stopped myself because I didn't want to pull Andy, so I went with Mel Hine from the Giants. I know a lot of names. What probably people aren't like, well, who's that? Well, go look it up. Do your research.
In order to be like myself, for example, I would not have picked Mark Stefanowski because he wasn't a Bear. So your whole entire little thing right there just went like a house of cards.
And what I said went right over your head. So
no, I completely got it. That's the reason I'm correcting you accordingly.
Right tackle.
Right guard.
Tackle.
Well, we got to go right guard. Right guard.
Damn it.
I go left tackle. Yeah, right guard.
I was just trying to get to the end of it.
Russ Grimm.
Really?
So, yeah.
Come on, he's a hog, bro.
And then
show some respect.
At right tackle, I'm going Rayfield White. That's
Homer selection.
That man was just a beast. So going on to defense, I'm trying to hurry up through this because I know we got a lot of time because Andy takes up half the show with his nonsense.
You're welcome.
I'm going with Reggie White on the Eagles. Of course, you know, he's going to make 2 lists just because it's Reggie White.
Yes.
At defensive tackle, Bob Lilly from the Cowboys. This is where kind of my list might change because, you know, I went with Randy White at the other defensive tackle. There's a lot of other people that you could probably put in there, but I went with Randy White.
Over the king of cocaine, Dexter Manley?
Yeah, I did. I mean,
Wow.
it was. I would put them both there, but my discussion was, do I put Dexter Manley in or do I put Randy White in? And I'm a huge Randy White fan, so I went with Randy White. That's just my opinion, but you could also put Dexter Manley in, and I have him right next to Randy White, so it wasn't like a big one. At other defensive end, I got Michael Strahan from the Giants. His record speaks for itself. So,
Wow.
Here's the other reason why I didn't go with Dexter Manley. I already have a drug addict on this team already, and I didn't want to have 2. So I got outside linebacker. I got Lawrence Taylor. I mean, I got Michael Irvin on one side. I got Lawrence Taylor on the other. I don't think he'll show up to the games.
Can you imagine the pregame though?
I mean, okay, let's throw Dexter Manley in there anyway. So, yeah, those 3 guys. It's baby powder. Don't worry about it. So Lawrence Taylor as outside linebacker.
You're not wrong.
Middle linebacker, I go with Sam Huff from the Giants. You know, we talk about the NFC North, you know, showing the linebackers they've had, but Sam Huff was, you know, right there with all of them back in the day. So I think he was one that started it. Outside linebacker, Chuck Hawley from the Cowboys. Trying to pick that one, it was just kind of, you know, I could have went down the list, but that's who we got. At my one corner, I have Darryl Green from the Washington Redskins. I've always been a big fan of his. Dude hit hard and he could intercept balls. So, I mean, I don't think there'd be a big argument on that. The other cornerback I got is Deion Sanders, which he'll make the West list as well, and probably the South.
Yep, not South.
So you can't go wrong with that. At safety, I got Brian Dawkins. This is where we kind of talked about before the show. I kind of went a little bit, maybe a homer with it. I could have picked Cliff Harris as the Cowboys, but I wanted 2 safeties that would just destroy people. So I went with Sean Taylor, even though his career didn't last as long.
Can you imagine?
There's so many highlights. I mean, if you had Dawkins and Sean Taylor back in the back.
Yeah. Sean Taylor,
be a lot.
if he was able to fulfill his career and play an entire career and live his actual life instead of whatever, no questions asked, first ballot, you know, he'd all century team, all decade team, you know, he'd be on everything. Yeah. I don't know if he could play in today's game with how he played.
Yeah, but Dawkins, I mean, a lot of the stuff they stopped was because of Dawkins too. So, I mean,
yeah, unbelievable. I'm not against that selection at all, other than longevity, and that was out of his control.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, like, look, there might be a lot of flags if we're going by today's rules with those 2, but I just want to see people, you know, those 2 would destroy people. So, special teams, I went with Mark Mosley from the Redskins as a kicker. Yeah. There could have been a few on the list, but he's the one. Now, punter, this is where I went last time we did this list. I'm going with Danny White. Now, if Staubach and Randall Cunningham get hurt, we got a punter, and he's up there. Quarterback. Now, I could have went with Sean Land. I always forget how to Lanta from the Giants. Could have went with him, but I want to do something funny and go with Danny White. You know, again. So I split up kicker. Huh?
About ways.
I know. You know.
Anyway, kick returner.
So
Dion?
Kick returner, Deion Sanders, and then I split it with the punt returner because as much as I want to, Brian Mitchell was so good at just. People don't know how good he was returning. So, and then of course, head coach Tomlin.
Mike did go. Oh, sorry. I thought
Yeah.
Mike
Should be
did
Mike.
coach of
Mike
all
did go,
teams.
or George
No.
Ellis.
Yeah.
Let's stop wasting everybody's time, and we'll blow through my list because it's perfect and impeccable. We don't have to dispute anything or argue anything. It's all on lock.
You
So-
have what, like three good players on that list from the South? Three, maybe.
I don't know if you know this. We have the greatest quarterback of all time in the South. Yeah,
Right. Tua?
Tom Brady.
Who?
No. So at quarterback, honestly, this was one of those positions where I was like, Tom Brady has a Lombardi, Drew Brees has a Lombardi, Matt Ryan's got nothing, Cam Newton's got nothing. So QB1, I got Drew Brees just because he played longer in the NFC South. And then at QB2, I got Tom Brady.
Arch Manning.
If we're scrambling around, if we're counting negative yardage, Archie Manning's up there with top rushers in the league. But anyway, yeah, I got Brees and Brady. At running back, I've got Warwick Dunn. Both Tampa Bay and Atlanta. And then I got Jonathan Stewart from, of course, Carolina Panthers.
Oh, wow.
Not Deuce McAllister.
I'm not a big fan, nor AK-41. I mean,
Ricky Williams?
I don't. Not really. No, I
This
think
is a
Ricky.
quick. I mean, you can't really argue with this list because there ain't that much to argue with running backs in the South. There's not really any good.
I mean,
ones.
there's nothing really. Craig Hayward was good for a season or two.
Ironhead Hayward.
Alvin Kamara was really good. Is really good.
Question. Question before I make my next comment: did you make a fullback?
I did.
Okay, I'll wait for that answer.
I've got two actually, but my starting fullback is going to be Mike Allstott. My second or H-back would be Lorenzo Neal.
Yeah, I just want to make sure Allstott was. I was just making sure you had Allstott on the list. I would have put him at. He could have easily been put at a running back the way later in his career when they put him in there. But you got him at fullback. That's fine. He's on the list. I'm happy.
Thanks to Gruden, Mike Allstott got notoriety. He was a fullback, and Gruden used him more as a halfback. Put him in a lot of sets as the halfback with Lorenzo Neal blocking for him. But I mean, Allstott, he's a fullback on this team. I think he'd be the starting fullback on any team in the league.
Mediocre at best.
Anyway.
Okay.
All right, wide receiver room. This is where it gets kind of interesting. I got Steve Smith from Carolina, Mike Evans from the Bucs, Julio Jones from the Bucs. Okay, no, from Atlanta. Julio Jones, he did play for the Bucs. That was terrible. But you have, a couple guys that should get consideration in like Roddy White and Slant Boy over in New Orleans. But I think those are pretty solid receivers for this team.
Steve Smith Jr. left off of it?
No,
Steve
starting.
Is he? Okay, I missed it.
He was Steve Smith when he played.
Indeed.
And then he started adding junior later. Senior. It wasn't junior, it was senior, right?
Senior.
Yeah, senior later. Yeah.
I just want to see if you catch it. That's all.
Yeah. Tight end is obvious, I think. It's Tony Gonzalez in Atlanta. You could go Jimmy Graham, give Jimmy Graham some love, but no, it's definitely Tony Gonzalez. Probably the best tight end in the division at the time. And if he were put in the league now, he'd be the best tight end in the league, in the division right now. At my tackles, I got Willie Rofe from New Orleans and Tristan Wirfs from Tampa Bay. At center, I've got Ryan Jensen from Tampa Bay. Now, center is a real tough position to actually pick someone because if you don't actually watch the linemen, you're basically just going off what everybody else is saying. But Ryan Jensen was solid for the Bucs in his one season where he was actually healthy. Led that offensive line to the Super Bowl. You guys can give me some arguments if you want, but that's who I'm going with. And then my guards, I got. Go ahead.
I don't think we have time for arguments, but go ahead. We'll discuss
Fane.
it next.
Oh, we got
Fane.
5 minutes left. Good Lord, you guys killed my time. You guys derailed the show before it got to the best division.
Thank
All
God.
right. And the guards, I got Jahari Evans and Bill Fralick, New Orleans and Atlanta, respectively. The defense is where this gets fun. Defensive end, we got John Abraham from Atlanta and Julius Peppers from Carolina. I could have went with Leroy Solomon and Simeon Rice, both from Tampa Bay, but those guys get the nod. At defensive tackle, I went both with Tampa Bay. I've got Warren Sapp and Vita Vea. And you want to argue, call your mama. And outside linebackers, we got Derek Brooks and Pat Swilling. Derek Brooks from Tampa Bay, Pat Swilling from New Orleans. Middle linebackers where it's going to get difficult because you've got a lot of good, solid middle linebackers. But I'm going to go with someone that's done it for years in the league. Just made the ESPN All-Century team. Quarter century team. I'm going to go with Levante David over Luke Kuechly. Comparing them statistically, Levante David beats him in almost every category. At my cornerbacks, I've got Deion Sanders and Rondé Barber. Deion from Atlanta, Rondé, of course, from Tampa Bay. At the safeties, this is one that I had a little bit of difficulty making the decision on. I went with Sammy Knight from New Orleans and John Lynch from Tampa Bay. I wanted to put Antoine Winfield Jr. in there, but he hasn't done enough to get that nod for me. My kicker, like I said earlier, is Morton Anderson from New Orleans and Atlanta. Punter, I got Bosher from Atlanta. And my punt returner, I've got Deion Sanders with the Atlanta Falcons. And unfortunately, as much as I hate to admit this, I think the coach of this team is going to be Sean Payton. You guys got anything for me? I mean, I know I rattled them off trying to get them in. We still didn't even get the NFC West in. Let's just say San Francisco, Eric Dickerson, San Francisco, Larry Fitzgerald, Terrell Owens, Jackie Smith, San Francisco, J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald. I mean, we're done. All right.
So for example, it looks like, and you guys were, of course, saying, you went bear heavy and stuff like that, but each one of us went relatively heavy with with our own respective teams. The only difference is mine are correct. Yours,
pretty sure.
Oh, my goodness.
Mine is well sorted, Andy. Well sorted.
Yeah.
Well sorted. Wrong.
I don't. Whatever.
That's like saying anything Dallas. I mean, it's all wrong.
Oh, Lord.
Anyway.
Okay.
All right.
So there were several of the Tampa Bay ones that I'd seen that were sort of that, with the negative propaganda that you're trying to actually spew here. And I can't necessarily show those for a couple of reasons. When I first seen the first couple of them, they had some derogatory terms. Accurate, but derogatory.
Anyway. You guys got any closing thoughts before we get out of here? I rattled that off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got an idea. Let's not start the show with Andy doing lists. Let's make him wait to the end, so he's got to just go quick.
We just cut him off.
The only good thing about me doing my list first, as a matter of fact, it actually shortened you guys' list, which was a major plus for everyone.
It can show everybody you're wrong. That's the problem.
Wrong at being yeah.
I'd like to thank our wives and families and allowing us to come on here an hour every Sunday to be complete morons and bore the hell out of you with our list and fodder for the offseason. Can't wait for the regular season so we have something actually entertaining to talk about. Until next week, gentlemen. In all actuality, the NFC South would clearly win this. Look at the talent on that roster. I'm just saying. See you guys next week.